they have some standards around that. You can't beat a child with something that has been designed specifically to cause harm. You cannot essentially lash a child out of anger, etc., etc. But the idea is that in school, you can still beat a child. The question is, who gets to do that? Yeah? And I wonder if any of you all have answers to that. Do you think that any teacher should have the right to beat a child? Because some folks have said, especially around the Dexter Gorbin thing, that we should have corporal punishment in schools, but we can't let every teacher beat a child because some teachers too angry. I don't know how they came to that conclusion.
Okay, that brings me back to what I was saying over the week.
Right.
You need to calm down when you're ready to discipline children. It makes no sense, because at that point, they, as I was saying, they don't learn anything.
Okay.
They just realize, okay, you are in a furious rage and I get licks for what? Because you were angry. Makes no sense.
In schools, it's reminiscing back on when I remember that this teacher had a go over with, and he bend the child over and pull his pants.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how it used to go. And
you know how it used to go.
You know how it used to go. But you see, picturing going back on that, I disagree. In schools, it's just different in schools for me. The corporal punishment, teachers kind of, I don't think, okay, so...
Yeah, but from age 5, you spend the majority of your conscious internalizing hours awake and in school.
In school.
Yeah?
But...
You wake up, you spend 8 hours in school. That is including lunch break. You spend an hour probably trying to get back home, right? You are conscious for another 3 hours, and then your mother tell you pee and go in your bed.
Teachers trying to discipline children, it's different than when a parent trying to discipline a child. I think when parents do it, they actually want the child to learn something. When a teacher is doing it, it's just because they're angry, you didn't do my homework, you didn't come back from, you didn't eat all the food. I don't know what teachers is hit for these days. I'm not sure.
It's usually around homework and academic achievement.
Some kind of something, right?
But I have a definite through line is that we want individuals to achieve a quality education. If they are robbing themselves of it, we will instill the value of that education through respect. Right?
Some of them. Go ahead.
But I just think that the school system is, as much as I value it, of course, and I've been in school my entire life, it's such a prison, you know. I mean, this is around discipline.
Coming from an educator.
No, man. It's architecturally school shaped like a prison. You know, to police people, you have to wear uniforms. Fear is also an authority, right? And knowledge is also rested in one person. Most of our schools down here do encourage lateral thinking, so it's not all creative kind of learning. So I talk on the majority of schools, not all schools like this. So it's more rote learning, memory, and discipline, and like that 1 by 1 is 2, 2 into 2. Like I watch people get licks for times tables, right? You know. Right, and you miss classes and stuff at university level, right? Where you get beaten to that at a young age. I think I draw parallels between flogging as a form of discipline at the adult level with licks in schools, because it was just an idea that when you're incarcerated or you in some realm of punishment, we have entitlement over your body. Even actually imprisonment doesn't mean you denied your humanity, right? You
still have bodily autonomy.
Exactly, right? This is your punishment to be away from. So I am actually against a large extent, unless it's a situation of violence or you threaten somebody else's life. I actually support more in-house suspension where they have continuous learning, because having them outside of the school system is also problematic, right? So there's a way that we have to learn to rethink what was the reason behind that rule, you know, and it's so scary when the next person who have control over other people's bodies. I think it's horrible. I just think about like you have a ticket or you're driving too fast and somebody hits you a slap in your mouth, right? First thing you do is tell, and that is why in America now, like you've seen all these videos where people recording, like teachers or police and these things.
Yeah, but they've internalized for themselves, and I think it's a subset of the same thing. When you have authority now, it's a Stanford experiment all over again. When you have power now, you internalize that power as not only having bodily autonomy over other person's bodies, but the ability to enforce that power and that justice through violence. And it's happening in the police system all over the Western world.
Yeah, and it's no fair trial. That's why it's too large. And I find and I hope I don't sound cynical here, I really rather a parent breathe afterwards with a panting chest, right? Wait, boy, I hit that child and I was wrong because I was so angry in that moment, I hit them. Then you go to sleep, bathe, brush teeth, wake up the next morning, knock my door. Well, this is the reason I'm going to beat you up now, right?
And then bring them a paper.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3,
You have
4.
been tried for.
You have now used your logic, right? And had no chance to persuade yourself. Right? That
Into
maybe
having a conversation. What are the
Exactly.
other tools that you could use?
Yeah.
So, if someday you'll have kids and you try talking to them.
I want a daughter.
You want a daughter, okay.
Play the
Yeah, I love
piano.
your children.
ultrasound. You want the ultrasound?
No. So you have a daughter and let's say she's 5, 6. You constantly talk to her, she kind of a little hardened. She's your child, so she may
Right,
be
it's
hardened.
true.
She might be hardened.
It's not hardened. She's very
Right, okay.
liberal. That's right.
Talking about a hardened child. She touching, she just hardened. We know miserable
Okay.
children.
Right.
And you keep speaking to her, she not listening. What would be your response to that, to her?
Okay, and I'm going to be absolutely honest. I don't know. Mostly because I don't have a child, but also because I am you're a product of the environment that you're in, regardless of what side of the fence that you're on. I've spent my entire life in a system where if you have children that are being unruly, you beat them. And I've not had a conversation with my mother about something else. I've not had a conversation with my father, with my grandmother, grandfather, teachers, parents, those in authority. I haven't had a conversation with God about a different system because I've been born and raised in a system where you have a child that's unruly, you beat them, right? I do think there are other tools. I do think that people in Trinidad and Tobago need to have conversations about other tools. For example, this is 2015. The idea that my children are going to spend most of my time talking to me in the first place is wrong, right? They're going to spend most of their time oversaturated by whatever is coming out of the TV, the radio, the phones, the iPods, the iPads, the something. They're going to find a way to create something else that does saturate children with information within the next 2 years anyway. And they're attached to these things, to these items, to these ways to experience the universe that also provide opportunities for us to discipline. Not only through removing them access to these things in the same way that you just ground kids and tell them, well, you can't go to the disco after school, you can't go to Hollow Rave now.
Then they'll sneak out.
Yeah, and right, and they sneak out.
And then, okay, they sneak out. And I find out to sneak out.
And I find out you sneak out.
Where's the response
do you do
after?
then?
Talk again?
Sneak out. What do you mean sneak?
Yeah, sneak out to the house.
I ground you. I say, not allowed to go there. Okay, you agree with it. And then you sneak out. And I find out to sneak out. After I talked to you, the response was talking. I talk. I say, you know what? I'm not hitting you, you know. You're not allowed to go there. And you sneak out. When you come
Now
back,
you see,
what are you supposed to do?
now you see, now Isaac right, and my personal experience is very, very extreme. It's very Cosby show. I feel like that is not to be talked about here, but I mean, from my statement in that moment would be, I know my child is inside in his or her room, so whoever is knocking on the door has to be a guest, and therefore has to ask for permission to enter my house, right? But that's just me being horrible. I would still that's still in essence a conversation.
Yeah.
That you've breached the rules of this space, right? You've breached the sanctity and the safety of this space as well, right? And there are certain logical and legal conclusions that have nothing to do with me putting my hand on you.
What
right?
would be, but yeah, but I
It is
wanna
about
hear-
respect for my property in the same way that I would respect yours. And that's another conversation that we need to have too. I think parents have completely misunderstood relationships with power relationships. That is to say, and my brother does this a lot. He's always complaining about privacy in his house because when we grew up, like the house was just a collection of rooms that my mother had power over, right? So when I had my own room, like my mother's room is built into my room. Let me just talk about that, right? Essentially, so my mother can wake up and leave her room to come into my room, and at her own volition, regardless of what I'm doing and where I am and how important my privacy is in that moment, right? In much the same way, we have parents and even teachers and other authority leaders, right, who are entering spaces not taking into consideration the ownership and the privacy of the individuals who inhabit those spaces, but only taking into consideration their power. We're not having those kinds of real nuanced conversations. How do both individuals / all individuals have a conversation about how all of us behave properly and intelligently and rationally and respectfully to all other individuals. That's something that you cannot enforce with a hard hand.
Yeah, and one of the things, again, you know, it just go back to, I was just thinking, it's kind of national pledge. I promise to honor my elders, my leaders, my teachers, and those in authority, right? Like as ageism 101, right? You know what I mean? As valuable as it is, and I support it, it could be misused for, you know, all kind of purposes in defining how the nation
do as I say, but not
exactly,
as I do.
right? And one of the things you also have to tie back into is that, yo, I go back to Khalil Gibran with your children, not your children. They're the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. We put so many responsibilities on parents and there's so much ego. Yo, you could get horn in a relationship. That don't mean you have the right to beat up the horny man and the horny, right? You was the faithful one.
It's true.
You were the good parent. No, you were the good parent who tried to do your best. Your child make up their own mind and will live up the consequences. And when they reach 40, they could have make a right turn, make a left turn, say this is my new reflections. Nobody planned for the children to have abortions later on at 23, 21, 16 or 17. Right? And sometimes are unaware of it. But your child would come and unravel that knowledge in their mind about the sexual decisions and so on. Children have their own desires for sex, their own desires for feelings, their own actions. So there's so much responsibility upon parents to look at that child, look at this. Clearly an indictment on the parenting, right? But oftentimes, yes, bad parenting leads to many dysfunctional environments which children grow up in that puts them into a lot of problems. But we also have excellent parents and children make up their own minds. And we not just chill back and be like, yo, that is that parent. They did his or her good job, right? And the child will have to find their own way, right?
Right. And
your head hot, right?
No,
You
they
will
want to
pay
say
the
that they make your
consequences.
child, they don't make their mind.
Right. And I wanna connect to that as quickly as I can. Is when we have, I'm using the word conversation too much because there are obviously other tools that we can use at our disposal, right? But when we empower young people with tools to make decisions, right, as opposed to beat them, we empower them when they grow up to be able to make decisions for themselves instead of hope that somebody outside of myself is going to take control of me and enact decisions on my behalf. And let's talk about that a little bit more. We need to take a break. You're here watching New Talk here on Synergy TV, Real TV. We'll be back after this.